Jeremy Littlejohn. I'm the CEO at RISC Networks. Well, the network's always been critical. It's critical to all projects. I think it has more importance now because of the way we address application architectures. So as we've decided we want to horizontally scale applications, which is one of the major ways we're going to get scalability and, for that matter, redundancy and performance out of our application layer. The network is what glues all of that together. So whether that be the network within your cloud provider or your data center, so your localized network, or in many cases distributing that application across multiple data centers for things like redundancy and disaster recovery. So all of those things contribute to the importance of the network. The last piece, I think the piece that's really come into play very recently, is that while the network, as far as a wide area network, has always been important to the enterprise, and all you have to do is look at the advancements in it, from MPLS, WAN acceleration, it's always been a trouble spot. Now what we're doing is we think about cloud, whether that be public or private cloud hosted in a data center, is you're introducing an additional network, and sometimes a public network that you don't control, or in the very least a long-haul network that you may or may not be able to get the SLAs that you would expect out of your current private network. So here, again, the user experience comes into play, because as I take applications from my data center and I put them in a different data center, or I put them in a cloud environment, the biggest impact is going to be on my end user. And how do they now consume that? And am I ready for that change in traffic patterns? So that's why I think there's such a renewed emphasis. Unfortunately, what we see is so many companies focus on the compute, whether it's CPU or memory or disk. These are the things that people plan on, right? This is the recommendation tools that are out there today that are free online will talk to you about that, or they'll talk to you about the platform as a service. Here's why our hosted PHP is better than someone else's. But nobody's really saying, right, here's why our network is better. Somehow Amazon gets away with having network ratings that are medium, small, or good and okay. I mean, these are the actual descriptions they give of their network performance. And so really you can see that there's a de-emphasis on that, but I think for the enterprise customer, they're looking at it saying, we have to have that. Those are things that are really important to us. We know from experience that that's a critical component. Well, there's problems during migration. There's problems after migration. Most of the problems that we see, let's start before the migration actually. Most of the problems we see before the migration are that people don't know what to provision for. So they don't even understand how much capacity they need. And those capacity costs are a significant portion of the ongoing operational cost of being in a cloud or in migrating a data center too. As you consolidate data centers, the increased bandwidth that you may need at the consolidation site to support remote clients can significantly change the overall cost of that project depending on your flows. So before, what we see is people having challenges being able to properly size that and account for the cost and the spend on those circuits. During the project, one of the major things you deal with is the actual migration. So either migrating workloads or migrating data. And obviously the performance of the network and the availability of the network is critical to making sure that happens. And then after the migration into a cloud environment or into another data center, what you deal with now is the user experience. And is that user experience the same as it was before? Has it improved, or is it getting worse? One of the biggest challenges that we hear from people when we get engaged at that point, one of the problems they have is they didn't have the data before. So in other words, they don't have the ability to say, previously, when this app talked to this app or this app talked to this client, this is what that looked like. We had this type of latency. We had this type of packet loss. We had this type of round trip time. And so now when they're in the new environment, they don't have a benchmark to go against. And so really it's about deciding whether the absolute value they have is good or bad. And this is very hard. So it just makes it difficult to troubleshoot. It makes it difficult to pinpoint an issue. So the biggest challenges I think that people have if you take all of those is just good information about the network. What's happening? What are the actual performance metrics for those individual applications that they're using? And then how can they use that to not only plan better, but also hold people accountable in a post-migration world and make sure that they're easily able to get to a root cause of trouble if they have it in their new environment. Well, one of the reasons we built CloudScape, we were originally kind of came and grew up on the network side. And a lot of the companies you see today around the cloud space or the virtualization space and data centers came the other way. They either came, well, some came from storage, some came from compute, we came from network. So what we bring to the customer is a deep understanding of the network itself and how those flows interact, when two servers talk or when a server talks to a client and so forth. Now we do obviously address the compute side and the storage side also, but customers really gravitate towards the ability to model. And that's one of the biggest things that our platform allows them to do. So to take different applications and or workloads, group them together and kind of model a what-if scenario. If we went out here and did this, how much would we need? What would that performance look like? And then also, we give them the ability to validate that. So to actually test that and make sure that, hey, before I move this application, am I actually going to get the performance that I expect or that I need based on what I'm doing today? And as with all the products that we've ever done, as a company, even, our philosophy is about getting them actionable data that they can use. So we don't want to just talk about it, we want to do it. And we don't want them to say, wouldn't it be nice to have? We want them to have it and use that to make decisions. So that's how customers use our platform to actually accomplish something. Well, let's break it into a couple of stages. So let's take, first of all, a discovery and planning stage, and then we can take an actual migration stage. In a discovery and planning stage, what you're going to do is you're going to use our platform to see what applications are in the environment, how they interact, who they talk to. Now, this doesn't just mean one server talking to another server. It also means one server, for example, talking to the internet for a resource it has, or that server also talking to clients. So being able to see all of that visually, first of all, so that you can see where that is, and then being able to artificially create groupings, which is a big concept. It's a layer on top of it, so that you can see where those different applications talk and how much any individual group of applications or workloads need to support them. Now, one of the other things that we do is we create locations dynamically. So we would understand how much of that traffic, for example, in your data center is talking to one branch versus another branch versus another branch. So again, this helps in that planning stage. What you're going to do with our product is you're going to discover all those applications and workloads. You're going to get I/O information, and if you're looking at public cloud, you'll understand what you need to do from that standpoint. But let's just take the network piece of it for right now and say, I want to focus on the network. How do I handle that? Well, you can take those applications you've discovered, explore their dependencies and their network profiles, group them into as many different groups as you need to segment your environment, and then model what the interrelationship between all those groups are. And that's really the most effective way to see what your future state is going to be and what your requirements will be. And so that's how people use our product today to do those things. Then when you're ready to actually do the migration, you can spec out your I/O. For example, if you're going to do a private cloud, or a data center move, you can see the I/O requirements at that group level for disk and CPU and memory. And then you can actually export that into platforms like a River Meadow to do a migration if you want to do that. So we really want to take you from, I have an idea about my project and I'm trying to get my hands around what my requirements are, being able to visually go through that and build those groups and then actually execute a migration.